Margaret had been serving coffee and taking orders for 37 years. But what happened that Tuesday morning when 3 college kids decided to mock the old waitress would change everything. Because sometimes the person pouring your coffee has saved more lives than you could ever imagine. The bell on Maple Street Diner's door started ringing with the first customers of the morning. Margaret Williams was 59 years old with grey hair and tired eyes. Her uniform was old, her shoes worn, but her posture was still straight and determined. "Morning, honey," she said to her regular customer, Mr. Henderson. "The usual?" Mr. Henderson nodded. "Of course, Margaret. You're a treasure in this town." Margaret smiled, but there was a shadow in her eyes. 37 years. She'd been working at this diner for 37 years. People only knew her as Margaret the waitress. Nobody knew her past. At 9:30, 3 college students walked in, Jason, Tyler and Brad. They were talking loudly, constantly on their phones. Margaret approached them. "Good morning, guys. What can I get you?" Jason looked up at Margaret. "Wow, this place is really old school. Even the waitress is vintage." Tyler laughed. "Yeah, looks like she's from the 1950s. Margaret's face didn't change. "Can I take your order?" "Sure, Grandma," Brad said, "but hurry up, we're going to be late for class." "How long have you been working here anyway? Did you start with the dinosaurs?" All 3 burst out laughing. The other customers in the diner looked uncomfortable, quietly watching the situation. Margaret took a deep breath. "I've been here 37 years. "Wow," Jason said. 37 years of just serving coffee. How ordinary." "Yeah," Tyler added. "Didn't you ever have a real job? I mean, something actually important?" Margaret's hand trembled slightly, but her voice stayed steady. "Can I take your order?" Okay, Brad said. 3 omelettes and 3 coffees, but please hurry, because we have real work to do." Margaret took the order and walked to the kitchen. Her heart was beating fast. For 37 years she'd experienced moments like this. People saw her as just a waitress. But today was different. Today she felt like she couldn't take it anymore. In the kitchen, Carlos the cook looked at her. "Margaret, you okay? You look pale." "I'm fine, Carlos, just tired." But Margaret wasn't fine. Memories were flooding back. That night in Afghanistan, the hospital tent in Kandahar, the blood on her hands, those young soldiers she tried to save. She prepared the order and brought it to their table. The 3 young men were still mocking. That comment broke Margaret's last bit of restraint. She set the plate on the table and straightened up. There was a different light in her eyes now. "Pathetic?" she said, her voice calm but determined. The 3 young men looked up. There was something different about Margaret's posture, her back straighter, her gaze sharper. "Yeah," Jason said. "I mean, you haven't accomplished anything in life, just waitressing." Margaret looked at them for a long time, then she began to speak. "My name is Lieutenant Margaret Williams, United States Army, 212th Mobile Surgical Hospital Unit." The sounds in the diner stopped. Everyone turned to Margaret. "I served 12 years in the military, 3 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. I saved the lives of 629 military personnel." The young men's faces changed. Margaret continued. "In Kandahar, in 2003, after a bombing, I operated for 14 straight hours. That night I lost 7 people, but I saved 13. Her voice wasn't trembling anymore. It was strong and clear. "In Fallujah, in 2005, when our hospital tent was hit by rockets, I didn't leave the operating table, because on that table was a 19-year-old kid, just your age." Margaret pulled out an old photograph from her pocket. This photo was taken in Baghdad. That young soldier, his name was Michael Thompson. He was 18 years old. He'd lost his legs, but I saved him. She placed the photo on the table. "That kid said to me, 'Doc, will I be able to go home?' And I said, 'Of course you will, son, I promise.'" Margaret's eyes began to well up, but her voice remained strong. 3 days later, Michael's heart stopped. "I worked for 20 minutes to bring him back. I succeeded. That kid now lives in Alabama. He's married with 2 children." You could hear a pin drop in the diner. The 3 young men stared at Margaret in shock. "But my hardest moment," Margaret continued, "was in Ramadi in 2006. We had a convoy hit by an IED, 5 young soldiers, all badly wounded." Margaret's voice began to tremble. The youngest was 17, David Martinez, son of a Mexican family. They'd come to America for a better life. David had shrapnel in his stomach, internal bleeding too. Conditions were horrible. No electricity, no water. I was working by flashlight. Margaret paused, closed her eyes. The surgery lasted 6 hours. David went into cardiac arrest 3 times. 3 times I brought him back. But the 4th time, her voice broke. The 4th time I couldn't. David died. In my arms at 17 years old. Margaret opened her eyes and looked at the young men. After that night, I couldn't sleep for 2 months. I wrote a letter to David's mother. I learned Spanish just so I could write to her in her own language. I wrote to Senora Martinez. Your son was a hero. Even in his last breath, he was talking about you. His last words were, "Tell my mum I love her and that she should be proud." Margaret pulled out an old letter from her pocket. This is Senora Martinez's reply to me. In Spanish.
Gracias, doctora. Usted le dio dignidad a mi hijo en sus últimos momentos.
It means, thank you for giving my son dignity in his final moments. Tyler's eyes filled with tears. We're sorry. We didn't know. Margaret raised her hand.
I'm not finished yet.
I came back to America in 2007, diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I couldn't sleep at night. I kept seeing David, Michael, all those young people in that hospital tent.
I got treatment. It took 2 years.
Then I didn't know what to do. The army had been my life, but I couldn't operate anymore. My hands were shaking. Margaret held up her hands. There was a slight tremor.
They still shake, but I know these hands saved 629 lives.
I came here because I wanted quiet. People don't ask questions. They don't wonder about my past. They just want coffee. Margaret smiled, but it was a sad smile.
I've been here 37 years. I know every veteran in this town because I can sense them. We've shared the same pain. Mr. Johnson, sitting at the corner table, Vietnam vet, comes every Tuesday, picks the same spot because he can see the exit from there, still has combat reflexes. Jenny Peterson, our cashier. Her husband died in Afghanistan. I never ask her how she's doing because I know the answer. And Carlos, our cook, Iraq veteran, has PTSD, but nobody knows. Only I notice why his hands sometimes shake.
Margaret turned to the young men.
So no, I haven't accomplished anything in life. I just saved people's lives. I just served my country. I just did what I could.
There was deep silence in the diner. The 3 young men didn't know what to say. Jason's face had turned bright red. We're so sorry, Jason said, his voice shaking. We didn't know. You didn't know, Margaret said calmly, because you didn't ask. You just assumed. Brad stood up. We're really sorry. You're a hero. Margaret shook her head.
No, I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who did her job, just like I do here. But the difference is, she added, here I'm also serving people. Maybe I'm not saving lives anymore, but I try to make people happy. Mr. Henderson's morning coffee starts his day. Mrs. Martinez's soup order reminds her of family dinners when she gets home. Margaret gestured to the tables. Every customer is a story. Every order is a need. I'm still serving, just in a different way.
Tyler couldn't hold back his tears. How could we humiliate someone like you? Because you're young, Margaret said, and you haven't learned life's real lessons yet. But what matters is that you remember this moment. Margaret sat down in a chair, getting to eye level with the young men. Let me tell you something, kids. Every person you meet in life has a story. The waitress, the janitor, the security guard, the taxi driver, all of them. That taxi driver might have been an engineer once, but had to leave his country. That janitor might be studying law at night. That security guard might have been a teacher once. Margaret put her hands on the table. Never ever judge someone by their job, because a job shows what someone does right now, not who they are. Jason hung his head. We made a huge mistake. Yes, you did, Margaret said firmly, but what you do now is what matters. Brad pulled out his wallet. Please, whatever we owe you. Margaret raised her hand. I don't want money. What I want from you is much more valuable. What's that? Tyler asked. Never look down on anyone again. Show respect to every person you meet, because you don't know, that person might have saved your life. Margaret stood up. And if you're really sorry, go teach this lesson to others. The three young men stood up. Jason approached Margaret. How can we make this right? Margaret thought. Start a fund for veterans at your university. Create a support group for vets struggling with PTSD. Do something for people who suffer in silence. We will, Tyler said with determination. We promise. And one more thing, Margaret said. There's Mr. Henderson who drinks coffee here every day. He lives alone. His kids are far away. Sometimes just talk to him. Just listen. Of course, Brad said. We'll do everything. As the young men paid their bill and left, they shook Margaret's hand. There was regret in their eyes, but also a new understanding. The other customers in the diner looked at Margaret with respect. Mr. Henderson stood up and began to clap. Others joined in. Margaret was embarrassed. Please, there's no need. There is, Margaret, Mr. Henderson said. You're this town's hero. You always were. We just found out now. Everything changed at Maple Street Diner after that day. Customers began looking at Margaret differently. But Margaret remained the same Margaret. Same kindness, same smile, same service. A week later, the three college students came back, but this time their hands weren't empty. Jason had a bouquet of flowers, Tyler had a thank you card, and Brad had a small gift box. Miss Margaret, Jason said, we brought you something. Margaret was surprised. You didn't have to, kids. We did, Tyler said. We started a veterans fund at the university. We raised $5,000 in the first week. Brad handed over the gift box, and this is for you. Margaret opened the box. Inside was a small plaque. Lieutenant Margaret Williams, silent hero, Maple Street Diner, family. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Kids, this is beautiful, but... No buts, Jason said. You taught us life's most important lesson, how to respect people. That evening, as Margaret walked home, she was thinking. For 37 years, she'd hidden her past. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe by sharing her story, she could inspire others. The next day when she came to the diner, she saw a small sign on the door. Margaret Williams, who works here, is a former US Army lieutenant and war hero. Please treat her with respect. Margaret smiled. Maybe now she could be both Margaret the waitress and Lieutenant Williams, because sometimes real strength is in silence. Sometimes real courage is doing your regular job every day, and sometimes the greatest heroes are the people serving you coffee. Margaret had been serving coffee for 37 years, but after that Tuesday morning, everyone knew she wasn't just a waitress. She was a hero who saved lives, fought for her country, and now continued to serve people quietly. And most importantly, 3 young students learned that day that you shouldn't judge people by their appearance, because you never know, the person in front of you might be the one who saved your life. The moral of this story: every person you meet has a story. Show respect, because you never know what that person has experienced and accomplished in the past. Margaret's story ended this way, but her impact reached many people through those 3 young students. And everyone at Maple Street Diner now knew, sometimes the greatest heroes are the most ordinary-looking people.